A beautiful rose can take years to become a mature plant. But what if you didn't have to start from a seed? What if a single healthy stem could become the beginning of an entirely new rose bush? The answer is yes. Growing roses from cuttings is one of the most fascinating ways to multiply a rose plant without buying a completely new plant. Instead of starting from seed, you can take a healthy stem from an existing rose and encourage it to develop its own roots. With the right cutting, the right moisture, suitable soil, and a little patience, that small piece of stem can slowly transform into a completely independent rose plant. Today, we are going into a simple village garden method of propagating roses from cuttings, from choosing the perfect stem all the way to caring for the young plant and eventually enjoying beautiful flowers. And the most important secret is this: successful propagation is not about planting the cutting and forgetting it. It is about creating the right conditions for roots to form while protecting the cutting from drying out or rotting. The first step is choosing the right rose plant and the right stem. Always start with a healthy plant that shows strong growth and no obvious signs of disease or severe pest damage. For softwood cuttings, young, flexible shoots are particularly useful because they can root relatively readily. The Royal Horticultural Society recommends taking softwood stem tip cuttings in early to mid-spring from the current year's growth, while hardwood cuttings can be taken from mid-autumn through late winter. So depending on your climate and the condition of the rose, you have more than one opportunity during the year. For a beginner, a healthy young shoot that is not carrying a flower is a good choice. Flowering shoots are generally less suitable because the plant's energy is being directed toward flowering rather than producing new roots. Early in the day is also a good time to collect softwood material because the stems are well hydrated. Now comes one of the most important parts: preparing the cutting. Take a clean, sharp pair of scissors or pruning shears and make a clean cut on the stem. For softwood propagation, a cutting of roughly 5 to 10 centimeters can be suitable, and the lower cut should be made just below a node, the point where leaves emerge from the stem. This node is extremely important because it is a natural growth point and can be a place where new roots develop. Remove the leaves from the lower portion of the cutting, but keep some healthy leaves toward the top. If the cutting is very soft and has a tender growing tip, removing that soft tip can help create a more manageable cutting. The goal is to reduce unnecessary water loss while leaving enough healthy plant tissue to continue photosynthesis. Remember, every cut should be clean. A damaged or crushed stem can make the cutting more vulnerable to problems. Next, let's talk about rooting hormone. You may see many home gardeners recommending different household ingredients or unusual tricks for rooting roses, but the more reliable horticultural approach is to use a commercial rooting hormone when it is available. Dip the lower end of the prepared cutting into an appropriate rooting compound according to its label's instructions. Rooting hormones contain plant growth regulators that can encourage root formation, but they are not magic. A poor cutting planted in unsuitable conditions will not suddenly become successful just because hormone was added. The cutting itself, the growing medium, moisture, temperature, humidity, and aftercare all matter. Think of rooting hormone as one helpful tool, not the entire secret. Now prepare the growing medium. Roses need moisture around the cutting, but constantly waterlogged conditions can encourage rotting. For small-scale propagation, a clean container filled with a well-drained cutting medium is a practical option. A gritty mixture can help provide drainage and air around the developing roots. The RHS describes mixes involving coarse grit and compost for hardwood cuttings. Make a small planting hole first rather than forcing the cutting directly into the medium. Then place the lower part of the stem into the hole and gently firm the medium around it. For softwood cuttings, make sure the leaves stay above the surface and do not become buried. Water gently after planting so the medium settles around the stem without washing it out. And here is another secret that many beginners overlook: humidity. A fresh cutting has no established root system, so it can lose water through its leaves faster than it can replace that water. This is why a humid environment can be helpful during the rooting stage. In a simple home setup, you can place a clear plastic cover or bag over the container to help retain moisture, but never seal the cutting permanently without ventilation. Excessive humidity combined with stagnant air can create problems. The RHS recommends ventilation when using a plastic bag and keeping cuttings in good light without exposing them to scorching direct sunlight. So think of the ideal environment as bright, warm, humid, but not baking hot and not constantly soaked. Watering is another area where patience matters. Your goal is not to keep pouring water onto the cutting every day. Instead, keep the growing medium consistently moist while avoiding standing water. Check the surface and the condition of the container rather than following a rigid watering schedule. If the medium becomes completely dry, the young cutting can wilt before roots develop. On the other hand, if the container remains saturated for long periods, the stem may begin to rot. This is why drainage is so important. In a village garden where natural weather conditions can change quickly, placing the pot somewhere sheltered from heavy rain and intense afternoon heat can make a big difference. Now let's compare the two main approaches, softwood and hardwood. Softwood cuttings are taken from young, flexible growth and are generally faster to root under suitable conditions. The RHS notes that rose softwood cuttings can root in roughly 2 months, although actual timing depends on conditions. Hardwood cuttings are taken from mature, woody growth during the dormant season, generally from mid-autumn to late winter, and they are slower. With hardwood cuttings, the stem can spend the colder period developing a callus before roots begin developing as conditions improve. So if you want a quicker experiment, softwood propagation can be attractive. If the season and material are more suitable for hardwood, that method can also work, but you need considerably more patience. Once your cuttings are planted, resist the temptation to pull them out every few days to see whether roots have formed. This is one of the biggest mistakes beginners make. Root development happens below the surface where you cannot see it. Constant disturbance can damage newly developing roots. Instead, watch the visible signs of growth and maintain stable conditions. If the cutting remains healthy and eventually begins producing fresh growth, that can be an encouraging sign, although new leaves alone do not always prove that a strong root system has developed. Give the plant time to establish itself. When roots are sufficiently developed, the young rose can gradually be moved into a larger container or eventually into its permanent garden location. When the young rose is finally ready for the garden, location becomes extremely important. Roses generally perform best in a sunny position with fertile, moisture-retentive, but well-drained soil. Give the young plant enough space for air circulation and future growth. Avoid placing it where water constantly collects after rain. Once established, regular care becomes much simpler. Water appropriately, keep competing weeds under control, remove faded flowers when appropriate for the rose type, and watch the leaves and stems regularly for pests or disease. Roses can be affected by problems such as aphids, rust, powdery mildew, and black spot, so early observation is much better than waiting until the entire plant is struggling. There is also an important detail about expectations. A rose grown from a cutting is not always guaranteed to behave exactly like every commercially sold rose plant. Many roses are grafted onto specific rootstocks, and the characteristics of a cutting-grown plant can differ from a grafted plant. Some modern rose varieties may also be protected by plant breeders' rights, which can restrict propagation for commercial sale. So for a home village garden, propagation for personal enjoyments can be a wonderful project, but always check the status of a particular named variety before propagating it for sale. And finally, remember that growing roses from cuttings is a lesson in patience. You start with something that looks almost lifeless, a small piece of stem with a few leaves, and slowly, beneath the soil, a new root system begins to develop. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and eventually that little cutting can become a young rose plant ready for the garden. The first flowers may not arrive immediately. The RHS notes that roses propagated from softwood cuttings can take around 2 to 3 years to flower well, depending on the plant and conditions. But that waiting is part of the beauty. You are not simply growing a flower, You are watching a new plant establish itself from a tiny piece of another plant. So if you have a beautiful rose growing in your village garden, don't think that its beauty has to remain limited to one plant. With a healthy cutting, clean tools, the right growing medium, suitable moisture, gentle light, good humidity, and plenty of patience, you can give that rose another chance to grow. The secret is not one magical ingredient. It is the combination of choosing the right stem, cutting at the right place, protecting the cutting from drying out, providing good drainage, and allowing nature enough time to do its work. And perhaps that is the greatest secret of the village garden. Sometimes the most beautiful new plant can begin with something as small and simple as a little green cutting. If you enjoyed this simple rose growing journey, make sure to subscribe for more practical village gardening ideas. And keep growing, keep experimenting, and keep turning small pieces of nature into beautiful gardens. Thanks for watching.